The message that Sri Narendra Modi needs to heed from the results of 2024 elections. Welcome, Swagatam, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Vande Mataram. Much has been written in the last 1 month or more about the significance of 2024 elections. I'm not in substantial disagreement with almost all of it, but I think there is something that remains unsaid, which needs to be said, and I would say this to the benefit alike of Sri Narendra Modi and opposition parties. Very rarely that it becomes possible for someone who doesn't belong to either of the camps to say something from which both warring camps can benefit. So therefore, I offer this very simple, small insight with a great deal of happiness, hoping that both sides at least will not misunderstand me, if not extend to this humble strain of thought the regard or attention that it actually deserves. It could work to their advantage if only they heed, and certainly it will work to the advantage of the people of India, which is where my concern lies. Now, I have been looking for a pattern in relation to which this gigantic process of organizing the 2024 general elections and favoring the country with its very intriguing but hope-affirming results, as happened on the 4th of June this year. Now, I would like to argue, I would like to submit that the best way to understand what happened under the auspices of the Election Commission of India, and I refrain from commenting on the quality and the sense of responsibility with which the Commission discharged its duties. Maybe that's for another occasion. I think the best way to understand the outcome of this massive exercise, which involved an expenditure of about 4,000 crores of rupees, if not more, is as a contest, as a head-on collision between power and liberty. Power and liberty. Please fix these two very crucial words in politics. You don't have to be a political science expert to realize that the entire history of our political existence can be actually summarized in 2 words: power and liberty. Rulers always want to aggravate and consolidate their power, extend it to as many areas of human life as possible, and aggravate its intensity at the degree of control to the maximum. Citizens, on the other hand, want to protect their liberty and therefore check the unhealthy spread of power and its tendency towards excesses. Power always thrives at the expense of the people. Please remember this dictum. Though it is possible via propaganda to get people fascinated by the expansion of power and the celebration of power as a cult, a national cult. It has happened on so many occasions in history. It's nothing new. Therefore, history gives us ample illustrations to find out what happens when power is turned into a cult and is nationally celebrated. Ultimately, the people have to pay dearly for it, and they pay for it both in terms of the destruction of their liberty and in terms of the unspeakable sufferings to which they are consigned sooner or later. There is no exception to this pattern. However, rulers of all kinds, whether they are in democracy or in aristocracy or in monarchy or royalty, kingship, they would like the people to believe that it is in their interest that the power of the ruler is extended and rendered beyond any reasonable control. Hence the idea of the benevolent dictator. The benevolent dictator. The idea is that democracy is inefficient to ensure the maximum welfare of the people, maximum welfare of maximum number of people, which became actually the political dictum of Europe for a long time to come, for a long time in the past. Maximum welfare of the maximum number of people, and any price is worth paying to ensure that this goal is attained. So in the process, actually this became an alibi for sidestepping the demands of human rights and the necessary connection between politics and morality, and the space for ideals in the practice of politics, so on and so forth. It's a fascinating history in itself. So now for the time being, let's stick to this very simple pattern lest we get a little confused or taxed in our brains. History can be seen as a tension between and a continuing, ongoing, almost unending struggle between power and liberty. So I said a short while ago that those in power have a vested interest in enlarging the scope, reach and degree of intensity of power, and they use all kinds of tactics for it. And in a democracy, power can be maximized only by co-opting the people, and various strategies and ideological faux pas are used in order to facilitate this. And one major manifestation of this is what is called majoritarian self-assertion. Majoritarian self-assertion, that is, the person who wants to capture power and to ensconce himself in the seat of power gets hold of the faith or trust of the majority community and makes the members of the community believe that their best interests are safe only in his hands, and that he is the messiah of the majority community, and that if he can be voted to power and if he can be perpetuated in power, the domination or the hegemony of the majority community over the country as a whole, society as a whole, can be ensured forever. So what happens in this process is that an individual's ambition for power is quite deviously translated into the secret longing for power of a majority community, and members of that community are made to believe that they are partakers of or participants in this national banquet of power which is being cooked by the foremost leader, and that if only they would help him reach the seat of power, and if only they would ensure his permanence in the seat of power, they would also have somehow, how exactly it is nobody is ever told, they would somehow in some way or other have their share in the national cake of power. But there is a promise that can never be fulfilled for the reason that it is innate in the genius of power to not want to have power shared with anybody else, whether it is with one's own community or with some other communities, the targeted community which is necessary to mobilize the majority community on one's own behalf. The fact of the matter is that once power is secured, the grace to share power will never be obtained. If you want any proof for this, just look at the various pockets of tension that have already almost abruptly started erupting like small volcanoes here and there within the BJP camp, the tension particularly between the BJP and the Sangh Parivar. The very surprising announcement by JP Nadda, even as the election was going on, and that's the most shocking of all, that BJP has now reached a stage when it doesn't need the help of the RSS. The BJP was abject in its need for RSS support while it was just running for control of the seat of power at a point when the animators of the center of power began to feel that their grip on power was more or less safe, very promptly in a small span of time comes the very unambiguous statement, look, we are not willing to share power with you. Till then the assumption was that the BJP was ruling India on behalf of the RSS. In fact, that was precisely what it was meant to be. The RSS always positioned itself as a cultural organization with no political ambition, but it also realized soon enough that unless and until it captured state power, it could not make the kind of progress it wanted to, and therefore it created this hybrid arrangement. The RSS will remain apolitical, but it will also sponsor a political party which will capture the state power and surrender that power to the RSS. And this was the arrangement that worked beautifully till 2024. But then by 2024, the dynamics of power, the pernicious dynamics of power began to have its free play, and the center, the nucleus of power developed the hallucination that it can actually manage without having to share power with the Sangh Parivar. Because in the formation of ministry, in taking major decisions, the will of the Parivar, the wish, the priorities of the Parivar had to be heeded, even if most of the time it was being flouted already. The Sangh was being marginalized. But a public announcement of this de facto divorce was made by JP Nadda, and I am sure he could not have done it by himself in his personal capacity as a quirk of his fantasy. He must have been made to do so by the people who matter. We know that JP Nadda does not matter. Even if he occupies a very important position, a position that matters, the incumbent of the office does not matter. So that is as far as the power is concerned. Now it is as part of this quest for maximizing power and to exercise complete hegemony over the life of the nation and control every aspect of it, that Sri Narendra Modi demanded 400 seats plus, which of course ensures brutal majority. And if you remember, I have already done a video explaining the political logic of it, how if a Prime Minister has 400 plus Lok Sabha seats, he would be in a position to make the executive preeminent in relation to the other two pillars of democracy, the legislature and especially the judiciary, and thereafter de facto it will be a judiciary led democracy, which actually means dictatorship under the garb of democracy. And this was the idea. I already explained that idea and I will not repeat it. So the quest for the maximization of executive power was well on its way, but the regional parties began to feel the heat of it, because the heat of this quest for maximizing power logically has to come upon them first, for the simple reason that they are the immediate hindrance to absolute power. Now, once a party reaches the kind of national spread that the BJP did, if it wants to expand any further, if it wants to tighten its grip over the country as a whole, it has to gobble up, it has to swallow up regional parties. Now, there are two ways of doing this. One is by co-option and the other is by brutal extermination. Now, parties like the Akali Dal, the Shiv Sena, and during a certain phase the TDP and JDU in and out, they were co-opted, and Biju Janata Dal, Naveen Patnaik's Biju Janata Dal, to a lesser extent Anna DMK after the demise of Jayalalitha, so on and so forth. They were co-opted, Jagan Mohan Reddy in Andhra Pradesh, they were co-opted in order to extend the footprint of the power footprint of the BJP to their states where the BJP did not have any major presence, but the BJP would be in power in a vicarious kind of manner, power by proxy, if you like. But the second model was to demolish opposition. So, ED, CBI, income tax were all used, and political adversaries were put in prison using draconian laws, which were actually enacted, modified, amended for that purpose, and all that's in full public view, and therefore I don't have to provide specific details for illustrative purposes. So now the opposition parties, which otherwise always refused to come together because each party was interested only in protecting its own turf. These regional parties do not have a national vision. They are only interested in looking after their own backyard, and therefore it did not really matter to them till recently what happened to the country as a whole, or what happened to other political parties, even if they are the opposition. It did not matter to them. But all of a sudden they began to realize, and particularly after the idea that the Indian Constitution needs to be revised, amended, and to what extent it would be amended was kept a closely guarded secret. Plus also this very startling announcement by Modi that whatever has happened in the last 10 years is a mere trailer and the real show is about to begin. Plus this idea of the 400 plus seats, and all this together created an unprecedented degree of insecurity among the opposition parties. They realized that they were facing an existential crisis. Nothing less than this could have forced them to come into this alliance, which very ironically was the creation of the Bihar Chief Minister, Nitish Kumar, and who quite mysteriously slipped out of it. And it is not difficult to speculate as to how this was facilitated, though I do not want to do it here at this point in time. So, in a sense, and that is the greatest irony of Indian political history as of now, the formation of Indi Alliance, INDIA Alliance, is the creation of the BJP. In particular, it is a creation of Modi, Amit Shah combined. So, if there is a massive change in the political landscape of India today, I would say that we owe it entirely to Amit Shah and Sri Narendra Modi. But for their maneuvers, menacing maneuvers, these regional political parties who are otherwise stuck deep in the mire of selfishness, self-destructive selfishness, in utter indifference to what is happening to the country, they would never have come together. They are so crass in their selfishness, so blind in their indifference to the plight of the country. I have to say that I have very little respect for them. I hope that they change, but as of now, I do not have adequate grounds to believe that they have learned the lesson of their life. If tomorrow the political situation eases up a little bit, like the proverbial tail of a dog, they'll go back to their old nature. Always these fissures are visible to those who are willing to look a little below the line. So, what they did was, the existential crisis they experienced, the threat that they faced to their own survival as political factors or regional satraps, they managed very cleverly to convert that into an anxiety for citizens that their fundamental rights and freedoms were at risk and would be at risk if BJP managed to win the elections. That is precisely the consideration that, or thought process, that worked behind the slogan "Constitution in Danger," and why these opposition parties went round flaunting a copy of the Constitution. And as I have said in a video about the Ambani wedding, I am not at all persuaded that the leaders of the opposition parties, barring Sri Rahul Gandhi, barring Priyanka Gandhi, they are sincere in their commitment to the Indian Constitution. They now invoke the Constitution, they flaunt in public their loyalty to the Constitution simply because they wanted something to counterpoint this power expansionist mindset of Amit Shah and Shri Narendra Modi, which faced them with the threat of political extinction. But instead of putting it in that sense as honesty would have demanded, they have transferred their anxiety to the people of India, particularly the poor, the downtrodden, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribe in particular, because they would be the most affected by the abolition of reservation, which would happen if the Constitution of India were to be abandoned and a new constitution, pro-Hindu Rashtra constitution were to be put in its place. And therefore, this alone explains the telling, devastating effect that the propaganda of the opposition parties had on the ambitions of Modi and Amit Shah, and why the outcome of the 2024 elections has proved so devastating for them, and they don't seem to have recovered from the absolute shock, the rattling that they have suffered. I'm quite surprised and I would say disappointed to notice that Modi and Amit Shah and those who are their camp followers do not seem to have, as yet on available evidence, do not seem to have understood the real significance of the 2024 elections. And I think the most important thing that they need to pay heed to is the fact that they cannot take the Indian voters' commitment to personal liberty and personal rights and privileges for granted. What was showcased in the last 10 years is the rights and privileges of the ruling class. And within that, the very powerful collaboration between the state and the corporates. Everything was done to favor and advantage the corporates. In fact, the entire wealth of the nation was put at their disposal, and the common man, the poor man, has suffered great discrimination and economic laws and erosion of the ground of his welfare, which is an undeniable fact. And the Modi government does not do itself any credit by silencing criticism on this frontier. In fact, they should heed this criticism and understand that the common man is bound to take this very seriously, whether or not somebody tells the common man or not, citizens, the voters or not. When the purse becomes empty and the shoe begins to pinch, and matters in the kitchen begin to go awry, there is not enough food on the plate, and there is not money in the pocket to treat oneself in times of illness, and the medical bills cannot be defrayed, then whether or not there is somebody who is educate them ideologically, making them aware of what's happening to them, what's being done to them, they will come to their own conclusions. As a matter of fact, the most important thing, the most affirmative, positive thing that I see in election 2024 is that the BJP's juggernaut of march to absolute power has been halted not by the opposition parties, not by Rahul Gandhi. He tried his level best, I give him credit for that, but the real heroes in this scenario are the people of India. In fact, they went far ahead of the opposition leaders. As a reason why the opposition party leaders are very pleasantly surprised at the outcome of the results, and they did not have a good enough idea as to how far the people of India were behind them. Even today, I don't think Rahul Gandhi has any idea, or a good enough idea, let me put it that way, about the extent to which he is popular among the people of India. I mean, through this very small YouTube channel, which is not even a channel, you can't call it a channel except by way of mocking the English language. I am amazed at not only at the massive proportion of people who are firmly with Rahul Gandhi, I am even more impressed by the sincerity and strength of their feelings towards him. Through every feedback I get on this channel, this impression is getting solidified that Rahul Gandhi is already far more popular then he realizes then his popularity is actually increasing day by day. And it's a good thing, of course, that he's unmindful of the extent to which his popularity is galloping. And he's all the time moving around, being with the people, creating a paradigm that is counter to the power-driven paradigm of Modi, where the people will always be used as pawns on the chess game of politics. Rahul Gandhi wants to enunciate a political counterculture in which the people, not power, matters. And that's a very, very welcome and healthy thing. And I am not surprised that people all over the country, in state after state, are responding to his initiative, and they are reading the message aright, and they are seeing a ray of light at the end of this tunnel of the sinister pursuit of power. And therefore, the Sangh Parivar, the BJP camp, Modi Shah combined in particular, they have to read the message of this aright. It doesn't help to become very reactive, react very viciously against people who are telling the truth. After all, only truth will help them in the end. And I believe that if Modi and Shah can actually heed the message that is writ large over the 2024 general elections and effect healthy mid-course corrections, they would still have at least another 15-20 years ahead of them. But if they become negative, if they refuse to read the writings on the wall, if they refuse to undertake the mid-course corrections that are urgently needed, and this budget, this year's budget that will be presented tomorrow will be, that is the 23rd of July. I am recording this on the 22nd of July. Sometimes I schedule a message, a video for a day much later than the actual date of recording. So on the 23rd we have the budget, and we'll know from that budget as to what extent this message has been heeded. But then beyond the budget, they also have to look at various political strategies. For example, things like Citizenship Amendment Act read together with NRC, that's a major issue. Issues like the rights of farmers, the rights of the youth, that's where the Agnivir issue becomes very, very resonant. Issues of the need to maintain optimum integrity in conducting national level tests, which would affect the hopes and aspirations of lakhs and lakhs of the best, the flower of our youth. And for the life of me, I don't understand why these tests have to be centralized at all. If at all they have to be centralized, they have to be centralized only at the level of the state. Centralizing eligibility tests at the national level can only lend to the centralization of corruption, which has been repeatedly proved by a whole series of 70 national eligibility testing question papers leaking one after the other. It is like an elephant developing diarrhea. And to assume that all this can go without the youth of India feeling frustrated and angry, I think one has to live in a fool's paradise, or worse than fool's paradise. Now all this has to change. The idea that all these central agencies can be stuffed with one's own camp followers irrespective of their merit, even as in all other instances merit is used to upset and frustrate the aspirations of the Dalits and the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. Merit is used against them. When opportunities are to be denied to them, merit is used, and selections will be done presumably only on the basis of merit. But when these sensitive centers of responsibility, like the National Testing Authority or offices of Vice Chancellor, UGC Chairman, so on and so forth, are to be filled, then it is not merit that matters, it is something else, something other than merit that matters. And it's far too obvious for me to have to argue this ad nauseum. So all this has to change. The people of India are not fools. It's very dangerous to underestimate the maturity and the discernment of the Indian voter, and that's one thing that has come out shining through these recent elections. So anyway, so I think the best way to understand 2024 elections is as a contestation between power on the one hand and liberty, or people's freedom on the other. Freedom comprehends a lot of things. I have not had the time in this video to explain the various aspects of this freedom, which also includes the right to quality of life, right to freedom, right to liberty, right to quality of life, so on and so forth. So it's a contestation between the two. And power cannot be expanded beyond what it has already been expanded. The citizens of India will not allow it. That's a clear message. So now the BJP has to rethink its power-driven paradigm of governance. Modi has to de-school himself. Amit Shah will have to allow him to de-school himself and to become more people-friendly. And I believe, based on 2 or 3 very brief, one of course a fairly extended interaction that I've had with him, I cannot but believe that Modi has a particular sensibility which can make him eminently people-friendly, people-oriented. But unfortunately, he is lodged in a situation, in a system, which is power crazy, and therefore he has been disabled vis-a-vis his own innate capacity to be people-friendly, people-caring, so on and so forth. I cannot believe that Narendra Modi is only a power crazy chap. Because if he is only power crazy, he would not have had the kind of charisma and mass appeal he has had. There is something about him which can be accentuated. But unfortunately, he now finds himself in a situation where I feel he is trapped. And he has been injected with this poisonous thirst for absolute control. And unfortunately, that's where the Chanakya of India is perhaps not playing a very desirable role, even for the political welfare of Modi. Anyway, I leave that to your understanding and speculation. So again, let me restate, because it's so central to my understanding of the political dynamics at play today. It's a contestation between power on the one hand and people's freedom on the other hand. So 400 plus seats as a symbol on this side, holding aloft the Constitution of India on the other. So you can imagine the picture. It's so beautiful, it's neat, it is simple, it's easily understood, and if you can keep this at the back of your mind, you can understand much that's going to play out by way of the evolving, emerging dynamics of Indian politics over the next 4 to 5 years. Thank you. Jai Hind. When I show my hands like this, it is not the Congress mudra. It is more like the Abhaya mudra, which is Daromats, because fear is the number one enemy of the citizens. Fear is the number one ally of the ruler. Fear is the foremost, most deadly enemy of the citizen. That's the contrast that I am trying to develop, and I leave it and I submit it to your further consideration. Vande Mataram.